Thanks for joining a special episode of the General Counselling podcast to remember our colleague Ashely King, who passed away suddenly at the end of 2020. To remember Ash, we've collated a selection of memories from his candidates, clients, and colleagues, past and present. As you'll see, the themes that come up again and again are Ash's generosity with his time, his wise and unbiased counsel, and his ability to build relationships, painting a picture of a thoroughly lovely guy, loved by all he met. There was such a huge response to the firm after the news broke about Ashely, which absolutely reflects how popular he was amongst the in-house legal community in particular, and how much he genuinely cared about the lawyers he was working with. So, with apologies to those who said they would like to participate but we didn't make it happen, I'd like to thank Tom Hambrough, Ben Robson, Nessa Koo, Saul Rachel, Harj Gill, and Sam Walters, as well as David, Josh, Phil and Andrea from Montresor.
Joshua Blake from Montresor and Third Way. I've just prepared a few short lines to run through on Ash. Always a pleasure, never a chore. He'd always give you time, of that you were sure. Client, candidate, colleague, Ash was always there. If you had a problem, you knew he'd care. When he left Robert Walters, I had to go too. Working with Ash is how I grew. He left us all in tears when his time came to go. He was a colleague, leader, and my best work bro. Over the years, he lent me many an ear. We shared lots of memories and many a beer. He cared about people and never owned glory. Whatever the chat, he had a great story. With Ash by my side, I was never alone. How great he could have been will never be known. Still, his achievements in life, I could write a great list. One thing's for sure, he'll be greatly missed. Thanks for the memories, Ash, and the moments we shared. Thanks for your help and the times you cared. And although we are now forever apart, you'll live eternally in all of our hearts.
Ash made a huge impression at Montresor. He set up our commerce and industry offering when we didn't have any business in that space. And I know, having recorded a number of these talking heads for this podcast, that no one else has commented on his ability to win at things. Ash used to win every game or competition we ever put in front of him, old games, new games, made-up games. In the 3.5 years he worked for Montresor, he had a 100% record on every company social game that we ever put in. He even won the great Montresor Bake-Off when we did that at a social just before lockdown. But he never gloated. He won everything, but was never overly pleased with himself about it, or never made a fuss. Possibly from years as a Spurs supporter, maybe he was worried about tempting fate. But I think more likely it was just not in his character.
Hi, I'm Andrea Hutchinson. I lead the in-house team at Montresor Legal. My favorite memory of Ash was our love for the Canadian people. I think Ash is probably one of the few people when he met me that didn't assume that I was American. His wife was from Canada, and we spent many beers talking about his favorite places that he visited, what he enjoyed about being there. And he was always a great friend. And that was our sort of instant connection from the day I joined Montresor. Most recently last year when I went home, sent me back with a list of his wife's favorite treats to bring back and surprise her. And I definitely miss having my Canadian ally in the office.
Fair enough. And a fellow poutine enthusiast.
Yes, and a fellow poutine enthusiast. One thing that I will take away from my time of knowing Ash is how much time he made for everyone, no matter how busy he was, whether that was a colleague in the office, a candidate calling to get salary information, or a client looking to hire. Every single person that I've spoken to that knew Ash always says the same thing. He always made time. And I think my goal moving forward is definitely to be a bit more Ash and to make time for people, even when it's not convenient, because that's what he always did. And it's what made him so great. And I was speaking to a candidate the other day who was calling in just to get some career advice. And he was obviously quite shocked when he found out what happened. And he said that Ash had actually never placed him in a job, but is the person who's given him the best career advice.
I think the irony of Ash's network is that the vast majority of his best relationships are people he'd never placed. But, he did, but they all got back in touch. And as a result, good things happened. And
yeah. Pay it forward.
Great.
I'm Ben Robson. I'm the General Counsel at Draper Spree. And I first met Ash many moons ago when he effectively talked me out of going for another job. So it was not the conversation I expected. I thought recruiters were supposed to get you to move and take their fee, but he was very clear with me that I was actually in the best place that I needed to be for my career, and effectively said, stick where you are and come and talk to me in a few years. So that always struck me as the measure of the man, really, that he always would put his candidates first. And his advice was great, because I came back a few years later, had a different conversation at that point where he said, yep, now's the moment. And it led me to where I am now. But that, and to be honest, that was a total game changer for me. So I actually a great debt, really. But yeah, I guess if I think more broadly about what Ash meant to me, he obviously would always be laughing. So I can't remember any conversation we had which stayed on topic for more than about 10 seconds. And that didn't mean to say that we didn't get to where we needed to on business as well, but he was very quick to share hilarious stories. We frequently came back to his woeful Tottenham Hotspur side, but I'm sure others will pick up on that as well. And I think what I realised now, particularly, I suppose you don't reflect on relationships all the time, but when you do, is that he had an unbelievable gift, and a rare gift for being able to effectively sort of work out your soul pretty quick. And he could understand you, bring out the things that you didn't even necessarily know you were going through yourself in terms of thought processes and really where you're at in your life, and somehow crystallize them really quickly and work out where your fit could be or should be. And for me, it was a real privilege to have known him, and he definitely changed my life. So it's not an insignificant thing to have done through the lowly world of recruiting. But so that's, I don't know, I could keep going, but there's some of my memories about Ash.
My name is Saul Rachel. I am counsel at ACI Worldwide, a large part of which I owe to Ashely. ACI Worldwide is a global real-time payments provider. So we're a software company assisting kind of banks, intermediaries, billers, payers with fraud monitoring and also real-time payments. So how did I meet Ashely? I met Ashely because a mutual friend of ours knew that I wanted to get back into law. I say get back into law because I'd had a hiatus, worked for the family business. So I'd had about 7 years actually out of being a day-to-day lawyer. And I said I wanted to get back into law. And my friend said, I think you should meet this guy called Ashely King. And he said, he's a recruiter. No offense, Tom, but straight away I kind of really. I kind of viewed recruiters at this point similar to estate agents. I just didn't trust them because my experiences with recruiters had been negative.
There's a very wide spectrum of quality out there. I will certainly acknowledge that.
Well, I am pleased to say I now would have a very different view, and that is because of Ashely. I actually met about 3 different recruiters through my friend, because he didn't only introduce me to Ashely. And that's another story for off camera about another of them that was actually a mutual contact of Ashely's that I will tell you about, as I say, when we're not being recorded. But anyway, he said, I'd like you to meet Ashely. He'd had a mirrored conversation with Ashely where he said, I'd like to meet this guy. Ashely had learnt a little bit about me and said, I'm happy to meet him, give him some pointers, but I'm not sure that I can necessarily be that helpful in placing him now. But I'm certainly happy to spend some time with him, go through his CV and make no more promises than that. And frankly, I think that's what you can ask of anybody. And that's probably more than most people would give you. Why did so many people have time for Ashely? Because he had time for people. And I went to meet Ashely for a coffee in Granary Square. And we sit down, we're chatting for a bit, and he gave me the blurb at the start, as if to manage my expectations is probably the best way of putting it. And we chatted. We sat together for about an hour, and by the end of the hour, he said, I think I might be able to help you. And I said, well, that'd be great, you know. And the next call we had, we went through my CV because we'd exchanged emails, and he gave me some really helpful pointers. So we molded my CV a bit more. And he sent me for an interview at a company called Endava, which was somebody that he knew. I didn't actually realize the level of connection he had there until afterwards. And what really had happened was he'd sent me in, and I don't think I had much chance of getting the job, frankly. But what was really good about it was the woman that interviewed me gave some feedback to Ashely, and it was very positive. And I think that validated clearly his view at that point that he would be able to help me. And the next stage of it for Ashely was he sat down with me, and we spent another hour and a half. We met at Costa. Although, you know, obviously I won't go into the quality of the coffee, but we met at Costa, and we went through my CV again, and he spent a lot longer this time because he'd had some really constructive feedback on how my CV looked, particularly with a view perhaps to that 7-year gap, which is not easy to explain on a CV. And I can remember halfway through this thinking, I'm not really sure why he's doing this, because I myself wasn't that confident that I would be able to walk back in that easily. But as I say, so at this point, he's given approximately 2.5 hours of his time, probably more, because by the time he'd organised the interview at Endava as well. So probably up to about 3 hours with a shot in the dark as to whether or not this would actually be productive for Ashely. Never mind for me. I mean, just meeting Ashely was productive. Going for another interview, just feeling like you're getting back in the game was really helpful. But the next interview he organised for me was at ACI and funny enough, you build this picture of Ashely. The person at Endava was someone that he was connected to and saw me because Ashely said, see him. He introduced me to someone at ACI who he knew, and he'd given advice to, hadn't placed them, but had given advice to them and helped them get back into the game. They'd also been in a family business. At this point, they were now head of legal. So I went and I was interviewed at ACI. I didn't get the job I was interviewed for, and it was a Friday, and I get a call from Ashely saying, right, then they don't want to offer you the job of associate counsel, but they'd like to offer you a job as a contractor for GDPR. I said to Ashely, well, I don't know anything about GDPR. He said, don't worry about that. They know that, but they're prepared to train you. And he said, look, it's a 3-month placement. I know it's not what you want to do. And I totally understand if you come back to me and say, no, it's not for me, but I'd like to think about it, because if I've been able to get you this opportunity with kind of nothing more recent legally on your CV, it would just make my job that much easier. And I said, yeah, okay, but I mean, I really don't know anything about GDPR, and I'm not really sure I want to, Ashely. And so I put the phone down, and I said to my wife, oh, I don't know about this. About 24 hours went past, and of course then I approached it a bit more maturely, thought about it, and thought, well, what have I got to lose? I should do this, and especially because Ashely's asking me, and I think that was part of him as well. He got your loyalty, he got your buy-in, because he was fighting for you. So he kind of, in a way, was trying to help me help myself at that point. Never mind rejecting a placement. He was giving me really good advice. And I saw that, and I thought, well, apart from anything else, I don't want to be that person that says, well, no, Ashely, I don't want to be that precious. Because if you get a decent work ethic and you get a reputation for that, people will help you that bit more. And I realized that. And so I said, look, I'll do it. And he also said to me, listen, I think if you do this, it may turn into something else. If you prove yourself, you never know. Show them what you can do. And the rest is history. I mean, they extended my contract to 6 months, even though I knew nothing about GDPR. And then I became permanent in my role as associate counsel. And I remember, obviously, told my wife and one of my best friends who actually introduced me to Ashely. But the next call I made was to Ashely, just to tell him what had happened. And in the run up to that, I'd been getting advice again from him, salary negotiations. What should I expect? Just general bits of advice. Excuse me. And again, he'd been spot on with all of that. He guided me really well through it. And at that time, he also began to explain to me his, I mean, visions, probably over-egging the pudding, but perhaps his plan for me moving forward, where he saw me in 5 years from then and what he thought he could achieve for me. And again, he had that way about him that made me feel he cares about me, he cares about my progression, he can help me, both in terms of my career, but I think at that point, with the confidence of, you know, I'm not a shy person, but I think we all question ourselves and get that imposter syndrome at times. And Ashely always made me feel, when I spoke to him, that this was realistic, what we're putting you in. I'm not putting you into a viper's nest where I'm setting you up to fail. And I think that's why second interview I got, because he knew people. He knew that organization was right for me. He knew that I was right for them. And it has turned out to be so, because was recently promoted. I told Tom about this recently. And again, I said it was a tinge of sadness to that success, because I feel that I owe Ashely a lot. And I would really have liked to have celebrated that moment with him. It vindicated not only my return to law, it vindicated my friend's decision to put us together, and it vindicated Ashely's faith, and that mattered to me a lot. I respected him. I respected his advice, his guidance, and as I say, the proof is in the pudding.
And I think that's I remember the exact time the placement, and you know, obviously Ash, you know, spent his time placing general counsel and like really big projects, but I don't think there was one I saw him get more professional satisfaction from than when he was helping someone who coming back into the industry, because he knew that that was the impact on that person's career, and as a result the relationship he would then have with that person going forward would be sort of unbreakable, because you know you went from being like job shop broker, salesman, estate agent type to someone that someone sees as making like a material difference and impact to their career, their lives, and you can then, you know, start to be mates and not necessarily get a Costa, but go for a beer or go to other stuff that's, you know, even more fun at the end.
Well, that was exactly, and I did really get on with him, you know, and we were also from similar parts of the world. You know, I grew up in the Midlands, but he changed my view. I mean, he changed my view of recruiters. I said at the start of this that I realized the value of a good recruiter, and it's like a good estate agent. You know, obviously there's a bit more to it, I believe, in what you do. I don't mean to cast aspersions, but if you get somebody who, and I think this is the bad apples in both of those type of careers, are the people that don't do what they say they're going to do, are always trying to, you know, I'm not going to swear because that probably will get edited out, but should we just say be a little bit liberal, economical with the truth, unrealistic expectations. And I think Ashely didn't do that. He showed me the value of his network, his, I think, innate ability to understand people and the right people to put together. And he deserved that loyalty that he then engendered, because I would not dream of having spoken to another recruiter from the moment that I met and got on with Ashely, because just to me, he stood out. And that, by the way, was a piece of advice he gave me. He said, don't do that. He said, talk to others. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. But again, that in itself is that lack of selfishness, really, in him.
That really drives relationships, and it's when people think that you're getting good advice from someone rather than just, you know, transactional advice that's going to benefit their ability to close a deal or make a fee. That's when you start trusting them and the relationship into, and conversely, as a salesperson, you'll then get much more value from that relationship, because the person will refer their mates or use you to hire, or, you know, tell you stuff that you know is valuable. But yeah, it was absolutely what he was absolutely fantastic at. And yeah, look, that's a fantastic recollection of what he was like. So thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you for asking me. You know, I say, I don't say it lightly. It's been an honor to kind of talk about Ashely and have some of those memories and views about him shared, he leaves a big hole. And I'm sure it's the same for you guys within the organisation. But certainly as a candidate stroke friend, which I'd like to have, think certainly would have developed that over the years. I miss him. I miss his advice, and I miss being able to talk to him.
Hi, my name's David Crocker, one of the co-founders of Montresor Legal. Sitting down with Tom Balmer today to talk about Ash and our memories of him. For me, it's a story that I've told a few times, but I think bears repeating on tape here. But Ash was really somebody who had a tremendous amount of empathy and was a very caring person, which are qualities that I think can sometimes be found quite rarely, particularly in successful people. And he demonstrated this to me most, I think obviously, and probably for the first time, when we were all on a company trip to Bordeaux. And this may sound trivial, and probably is actually trivial, but I was watching Arsenal, who I support and derive an awful lot of disappointment from. And it actually, weirdly, I can remember it was a game against Watford, and they'd gone 1-0 up, and then they lost it in sort of just unbelievably irritating and I think probably unfair circumstances in the last minute. And I was on my own in a pub, and then we were all meeting up for some food after, and we sat down. And Ash, as I'm sure a lot of people watching this will know, was a big Tottenham fan and very competitive actually with it. And I was expecting the reaction that I would have had in that situation, which was to be, extremely triumphant in the loss that I'd suffered and Arsenal had suffered. And actually, he was just the complete opposite, and it really confounded me in such a positive way, that he was just very understanding. He said, "Look, I'm not going to. I've been in that situation myself, and you're probably in a bad mood, and we just want you to feel kind of better and enjoy the evening out." And as childish as my reaction can sometimes be when Arsenal lose, he was obviously completely right and really helped me to feel better. And it's just, as I said, very trivial, but it also speaks so specifically of the quality that I'm trying to get across that Ash had, which was just a very human touch. And I'm sure you'll hear a lot of other stories from people that say the same thing. But that's really my abiding memory of Ash, outside of his great work that he did in the company. Was such a very nice man, and caring with other people.
My name's Harj Gill, and I'm the Group General Counsel at the Live Group. I met Ashely back in 2015 when I came back from New York, having done the New York bar, and I was looking for another position in London. And I was struck by Ashely's openness, honesty, and just him being a very, very genuine person. And he soon became someone that I could turn to for advice. And he actually helped me secure a position quite quickly in London. The thing that surprised me most about Ashely in that respect was that he helped me secure a position where he had no commission coming from that engagement, because he knew the hiring manager. And so I was really kind of taken back by how he was kind of forthcoming and willing to help someone, even when there wasn't any direct gain for him. And as a result of that, we soon became very, very good friends. We realized we had lots of similar interests. We'd often go out drinking together, talked about football. Unfortunately, he was a Spurs fan. And we soon realized we had a shared interest in the NFL as well. And so every Super Bowl would see who could stay awake the latest and make it through the night. Usually it wasn't Ashely. But one of my funniest memories about Ashely is it was a birthday of mine a few years ago. And Ashely was adamant that he'd arrived at the venue on time. And Ashely, physical presence, you couldn't really miss him in a room. And he was adamant he was there. And I was like, Ashely, we can't see you. We're right at the front. Turned out he'd gone to the incorrect Hoxton Hotel, and so then had to jump in a cab and come to the correct one. And that was pretty embarrassing for him, but given who Ashely was, we all forgave him. And I think my biggest impression of Ashely is that he's someone that's all too rare in the world today, in the sense that he was very, very genuine, didn't have an ego, and put others before himself. And yeah, it will definitely be missed.
My name is Nessa Ko. I am the General Counsel of Pure Electric. I met Ash when I had first come to the UK to work in London in about 2015. And since then, Ash has become a trusted colleague, he's been a trusted advisor, and most importantly, a friend. So the entire time that I've known Ash, and also how I always will remember Ash, is that he always went above and beyond to advise you, just to ensure that you feel okay with the set of decisions that you always had to make. Ash actually never recruited myself directly. I knew him through networks of recruiters when I first came over to London. And I remember with each job offer, from consultant over to legal counsel to senior counsel, and then now my general counsel role, which each promotion, Ash actually wasn't involved. He never stood to make any financial gain from each of the moves, each of the promotions that I had done. But I always remembered every time I happened to be considering a job offer, somehow we would run into each other on the street, or we'd have an email exchange. And Ash would always ask me how I'm feeling about the potential move. And even though he professionally really never had anything to do with my decision, he always ran through the pros and cons. And it would go from ranging what the job salary would be from a competing offer, all the way down to how I feel about the actual colleagues, what he does and doesn't know about the company, etc. So strangely, all three of my promotions since having come to London, it coincided with a serendipitous interaction with Ash. And this really was confirmed by all the different instances where I had friends who were looking to make a move internationally, like I did, from somewhere else all the way to London. And Ash would take the time to physically meet us for coffee. He would meet myself and a friend for coffee. I would take a step back so that they can talk. And to this day, my friends would always remember how selfless he was with his time. He may or may not have been able to make any connections or any recruitments on behalf of that friend, but knowing that they're in the same position as me, where 5 years ago when I had met Ash, I had no idea what to do. He took the same amount of time just to make sure they understood all their bases and understood all the steps they needed to take in order to maybe have a conversation with him in 5-10 years, and maybe even not at all. So what I remember Ash for always will be that he ensured that if he had information or time to help you understand and feel comfortable about what you do decide, even if your decision is to walk away, he always did take that time, even if he was busy, even if it was a weekend. He always wanted to make sure if there was something he could do to clarify what you decided to do, he would be there for it. And that's how I'll always remember him, always above and beyond helpful, even if you didn't ask for it, because he knew you needed the time.
That and dogs.
That and dogs, absolutely. Ash had a funny way of prompting me to a meeting. So every time we had a meeting, either I would be running late or he would be running late, always, all the time. And the prompt was always, I would get some message on my WhatsApp of his beautiful golden retriever. And that was our bat signal. Our bat signal actually was his dog. And yeah, it was really nice to have those personal moments with him, because I think that's how you transcend from just a really, really enjoyable professional relationship to somebody who's actually a friend. And that's why even though they had never met, I always tell my husband about Ash, and we always had plans for when I say this now after a year of lockdown, and it still seems like a fairy tale, when things are going to be back to normal. We were always going to go back to Victoria Park with Ash and his wife and their dog, and I would introduce Richard to him, because when I met Ashely was about to get married. And the last time he and I had ever spoken to each other face to face, I was about to get married as well. So we had these big plans that we were going to go to, remember, we were going to play with this dog in Victoria Park and then sit down for a beef Wellington. So it was, I had shared with Ash that when I was growing up, I was so poor that when people were able to eat steak so rare that it's red, but it still doesn't kill you, like that's when you know you've made it. So when he treated me to my first lunch with him when he joined Third Way, when I was senior counsel, he remembered that from 4 years ago. And when I sat down, there was a beautiful, beautiful beef Wellington. And it's just these little things that really affirmed to me, Ash Ash may have never been my recruiter. He may have been in the recruitment business while I got to know him, but Ash definitely was a friend. He absolutely was. So it's a shock to learn what I did learn about Ash in recent months, but it's undeniable that that level of interpersonal skills, not only just to reach out and make sure that your friends and your colleagues are okay, because it sounds trite. Many people can drop a line, but being remembered and being made to feel important in the person you were engaging with, like nothing distracted him, no calls, nothing. Like when I spoke with Ash, whatever it was that was concerning me, or not even concerning me, anything that I wasn't sure of in a pending professional decision, whether it's my move or whether it's to onboard somebody, I had his full attention. And it seemed natural because I never went out to command his full attention. That's why it was so comforting to talk to him, because that's the entire environment with him consistently every single time, is how he is able to sit and listen to you, to understand and really pinpoint, almost like a therapist, what is it really that's scaring you. So I'll always remember Ash for that. And the last advice he had given me was when I was about to come on to this role in Pure Electric, when I was about to be offer the general counsel role formally. I was scared for a million reasons. One, it's a GC role. Second, I'm moving out of London. I don't drive. I've never lived outside of a big city. And Ash was the only, not even my husband, Ash was the only person to call me out on my BS, because I was hesitating, not because of any anticipation or any genuine fear. I was anticipating all the things that could possibly go wrong that really could not possibly have gone wrong. So I really respected Ash for that, because part of supporting me was not just listening to me. He did what a friend was supposed to do, which is to call you out on your nonsense when it really was in your best interest to be told, when honestly nobody else did. It was only him. And it was because of that conversation I'm sitting here now as general counsel with incredible experience. I'm learning so much. And it's because that one time I took a call from him when I was in Ipswich Football Club. And he had messaged me to ask me, have you accepted that offer yet? And I said, no, I'm just sitting here in an external meeting. And he literally called me to call me out, because he always reminded me that you regret what he said, something along the lines of, you'll regret not trying, but you will not regret failing, because everyone fails. But if you try, you'll truly know whether it was the right thing to do or not. But you can't say that if you step away from the entire conversation. So if you want to own a decision, own the risk as well, because otherwise you haven't really made a decision at all. So that, I paraphrase what he said, but it was for that reason I took this GC role. So professionally, financially, personally, it's made a lot of positive changes in my life, and I have Ash to thank for that.
I'm Phil Redhead. I'm one of the senior consultants in the commerce and industry part of the business. I worked with Ash for about 2.5 years. I was struggling to think of one specific anecdote or memory that sort of typified Ash in what he was and the way that he worked. And I think for me, probably it's easiest to talk about the first day that I met him when I was looking to change businesses. And he interviewed me, and within about 2 minutes, it was very clear that I definitely wanted to come and work at the business, and I definitely wanted to come and work for him. The sort of phrase honesty and integrity is thrown around in recruitment businesses a lot as something that everyone wants to show that we definitely do, and we care about our candidates and we care about our clients. And some people embody that and some don't. And Ash was someone that it really was the entirety of the way that he worked. And it was so clear. It's the reason that he was so incredibly popular with his clients, but also very importantly with all of his co-workers and colleagues. Something that's sort of become very clear over the course of the last few months, and the kind of messages that we've had in from people. He really did genuinely care a lot about what he did. The job was sort of incidental. He was really focused on the relationships he was building with people and what he was doing for them. And he was very, very free with the time that he gave, regardless of any kind of reward that would come his way. And that was very clear to me within sort of 2 minutes of meeting him, that was the way that he worked, and it resonated massively with me.
Hi, my name's Sam Walters. I'm director for the Robert Walters London business. I had the very, very fortunate privilege of working with Ashely King for 3.5 years at Robert Walters, and also had the pleasure to manage him for 2.5 years. When I say manage, it was very unlike a typical management relationship. We just worked very closely together. But my probably most adoring memories of Ash is just effectively how much time he would spend, with every single candidate, colleague, client that he came in contact with, but more so the candidates that were unsuccessful in all his processes. The credibility, the reputation that Ash had. 80% of the work that he did was largely exclusively retained or mandated on, where he was just the only agent in the market working for it. But I remember particularly, I think it was a July time, 2015, he had this 5 to 6 month process for quite a tricky technology client. And it was a sole general counsel role. And we got towards the end of the process. And I remember sort of the Thursday where he got the final offer, and the candidate, we knew was going to accept the role, and they accepted it. And, a typical reaction for most recruitment consultants in that sort of happy, joyous occasion when a candidate accepts the offer that you've worked tirelessly on is to sort of jump up and down, beat the chest, and draw a figure on the board and high five everyone. But Ash was quite, he was a little bit reserved, and sort of walked up to him. And I said, what great work, fantastic that process is now finalised. But he sort of sat there mulling over the 4 people that didn't get that job. It was a fantastic job for a great company, and it was hotly contested. But quickly after the call he made to the successful candidate, he was sitting there writing very detailed notes for the next 4 candidates that he had to let down. And, he probably spent about 3 hours on the phone, in total with all of those candidates. And, that type of level of dedication he took to telling people that they were unsuccessful and why has made those candidates successful in their next process that either was with Ash or another consultant or another agency. And I just, I still look at emails on our internal CRM now, and you'll see the processes and the feedback that Ash always used to get, just the level of detail he would go into, again, to why people wouldn't get the role. And, if you're a fairly mercenary business owner, one criticism of Ash is that he probably wasted too much time speaking to so many people that he probably couldn't help. But he was never ever going to change that way about his nature, because, as a lawyer himself, he received some very shoddy career advice in the early parts of the career. He almost made his life's mission to spend so much time with people who probably didn't necessarily have, an Oxbridge background or things like that, and help them as much as possible to get that fantastic role that generally he was working on. But yeah, that process in 2015 was a real frank memory of Ash, sort of not necessarily celebrating, but almost commiserating the people that didn't get the job. And that, for me, just is a testament to the human being, the individual that he was. And yeah, he'll be missed very greatly, not only personally as a family man, but I think professionally the legal industry has lost a fantastic human being, a soul, but someone who was probably one of the best recruiters. Definitely for me is the best recruiter I've ever hired and worked with over a period of time. Hopefully his professionalism and the way he treated people will definitely live on through the generations. But yeah, thank you very much, Tom, for the opportunity to say a couple of words on Ash's behalf.
Hi, my name's Tom Hambred. I'm the General Counsel at Revolut. My dealings with Ash were always, I always look back incredibly fondly on them all. And I've have always enjoyed catching up with Ash in both a professional and a personal sense. Ash brought a lot of warmth to my life and to the entire team. His personality and ability to understand innately the demands and the requests of the business that we were looking to service in-house as the legal function was second to none. I genuinely believe that he was someone which could distill problems and sometimes big asks from myself and the team when we were scaling, and his ability to match us with candidates and talent that would fit into our culture and our mission and our objectives with what we were trying to find for in those roles was really second to none. So my lasting thought of Ash has always been how brilliant he was at being able to tap into what made us drive as an organization and thus what made the legal team click at Revolut and the types of characters and personalities and diverse values and thoughts that we appreciated and put value on was fantastic, and one which I owe a lot to Ash, and we all do who have worked with him, for his role in shaping particularly my team and the strength of that team. Where I generally got the feeling when working closely with Ash that Ash understood the values and the ethos of what we were trying to achieve. So he was a product focused recruiter that didn't though discount the need for EQ, and so his emotional intelligence was brilliant in ensuring that we weren't wasting time just sort of screening and reviewing candidates and interviewing potential team members for the sake of it, but it was a tailored scientific approach that was underpinned with not just data and numbers, but an understanding of the person's background and ability to fit into the team and operate within the family.
Personally, I've been lucky enough not to lose anyone close to me before Ash. One of the feelings I found most prevalent over the last few months has been a sense of guilt that things have gone back fairly quickly to normal in the business. Life has moved on, and especially I'm well aware that for Ash's wife and his family, the loss and the feeling of pain must still be incredibly raw. But I would say, as you'll have been able to see from the talking heads on this episode of the podcast, there isn't a week goes by that someone from Ash's network doesn't reach out, either because they've just heard and they're completely shocked and they want someone they've never spoken to before just to talk to about it, or because they're wanting to see if they can help because they're looking for a job or because they're looking to hire someone and they want to see what they can do to help the business that Ash was a part of. So he leaves a huge gap and a huge hole in our business and is incredibly missed by everyone within Montresor. And I think you'll have seen by what people have been saying on this podcast that it's completely consistent. We had so many people get in touch from all walks of life, wanting to remember Ash and wanting to just tell us that he made a difference to them, or he'd done something that helped them in their career, or given them time when other people weren't, or just been responsive, or just been a source of useful advice. So it's one of the absolute tragedies of the last year that this happened, and I would like to put my heart out to anyone who's suffered from sudden arrhythmic death syndrome and knows what an absolutely awful thing that can be on the people who are left behind. We all miss Ash hugely, and before I go, if there's anyone watching or listening who'd like to know about other initiatives we're planning to honour Ash in his memory, please do get in touch. Drop me a line via LinkedIn or on the Montresor website. Thanks very much for listening.